friends, I'm Allie, I'm the saver, and welcome to My Money, My Purpose. If you're new here, we talk all about our financial journeys and incorporating health and wellness into our finances. So if that sounds like something that you're interested in, then definitely subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss one of our uploads. So if you watched my last video on my savings goals, you'll know that for this year, I'm currently saving up a down payment for a house. So today I wanted to talk about what buying a house in the US is like right now. So we'll talk a little bit about an overview of the economic situation and the costs of houses currently, some of our personal reasons for why we're looking to buy a home right now. I'm also going to talk through the financial documentation and research that we've done to prepare for buying a home. So I'll talk about calculating your debt to income ratio, using a mortgage calculator, how we determine the budget for our home, saving for a down payment, saving for closing costs, and looking at our credit score. And then any documentation that we're going to need when we actually go into a loan office to apply for a loan. Okay, so let's start with the facts. What does the current housing market look like in the United States?
We're actually now at the lowest point of the volume of mortgage applications since December of 1996.
It's a mess. I think 6 months ago, I said the housing market's a mess. It can't possibly get much worse than this. It actually has.
Well, for starters, the national average for a home is around $416,000. This is up about 37% from what it was at in 2019, when housing costs sat around $258,000. To put this in perspective, 4 years prior to that, in 2015, housing costs sat around $221,000. So from 2015 to 2019, prices rose about 14%. And from 2019 until 2023, prices have risen about 37%. In addition to that, I looked at my current area. So I currently live in Florida, and the national average here is around $392,000. This is up about 31% from the housing prices in 2019, which sat around $269,000. And in my particular area, so my neighborhood, when it was built in about 2017, 2018, people were buying these homes for around $200,000 to $250,000. Current market, houses in our neighborhood are selling for between $450,000 to $500,000. And the reality is that there really hasn't been a lot of upgrades or anything done to these homes. They're simply selling at a higher rate. In addition to that, interest rates are sitting at around 7 to 8%. So when we use the mortgage calculator and we put in, if we were to buy a house at the national average around $416,000, we found that we would actually be spending almost $1,000 more in our housing costs per month than we are right now when we're renting. Okay, so now you're probably wondering why we even want to buy a home if the current situation looks so poorly. I think that this is a very personal decision, and personally, I think that it is financially smart to own assets.
If you buy the assets first, then you can go and buy the liabilities.
I would personally rather the money that I spend each month go towards something that I own and that I can leverage in the future and will provide some type of a benefit to. I also think that if done correctly, owning a home can actually decrease the amount of money that you spend per month. So I'd like to dig into the financial research that we did in order to determine how we can lower our monthly expenses while still being in a position to be able to own a home. Okay, so the first financial item that I wanted to talk about is calculating your debt to income ratio. Your debt to income ratio compares how much you owe each month with how much you earn each month. So specifically, it's the percentage of your gross monthly income, so that would be what you make prior to taxes, that goes towards payments for rent, mortgage, credit cards, or any other debt. So when calculating our debts, we have rent, we have student loans, and we have credit cards. So our rent is $2,650, our student loan payment is $300, and for credit cards, you just take the minimum payment required each month. So between all of our credit cards, it's around $200 a month. And then our total income prior to taxes for each month is around $15,000. So I took the $3,100 in debt and divided that by the $15,000 to get around 21% for our debt to income ratio. So just to note, the max debt to income ratio that you can have usually to get approved for a loan is around 43%. So as long as you're below that number, you should be good. And just to clarify, while rent is included in your debt calculation, utilities, gas, taxes, and any other things that you spend throughout the month are not included in that. So it's specifically rent and then any debts you have, like student loans, personal loans, credit cards, things like that. Okay, so I brought out my computer to show you how we calculated our budget. So to determine our housing budget, we utilized the Zillow calculator in order to determine what monthly payment in our mortgage we wanted to have, and then we based our budget off of that number. So I'll put this up on the screen and kind of walk through how to utilize this tool. You can really pick any house on Zillow because once you go into it, you can put in any numbers that you choose and kind of move things around until you get to the number that you like. So if we go into Zillow, we scroll down, you'll come to the monthly cost calculator. And so we start with the principal interest category. So basically you can enter in the price, the home price, the initial home price, and what you're gonna put down as a down payment, and then it'll adjust the monthly cost depending on that. The biggest thing to know when you're picking a house to do the calculation in is pick the area and the state that you will be buying a house in, because the other costs, such as property taxes, home insurance, and HOA fees will depend on where you're actually at. So to stay in Florida, we need to find a home that's $300,000 and we put 10% down. So we're currently saving up for a $50,000 down payment. Now we do want to include closing costs in that, so we would actually have a lower down payment than that specific number. So we're looking to put 10% down, and then you have to factor about 3 to 6% in for closing costs. And then as you can see, a 30-year fixed mortgage, interest rates are around 7.6%. You have mortgage insurance, property taxes, like I said, this is dependent on the state that you're looking in, home insurance, and then HOA fees is also going to be dependent more on the neighborhood that you're looking in. And then utilities would be an additional cost. Essentially what we did is we played around with this, and then we factored in that we would probably offer less and assume we would negotiate, right? If you're gonna negotiate the home price, what we found when I did research online was that it's appropriate to offer anywhere up to 20% below the current home price. So offering more than that is considered an unreasonable offer, but as long as you're going within the range of 0 to 20% less as your offer price, then there's room to negotiate. So factoring that in, if we were to look at a house within the range of around $350,000, and we offer 20% below that, we would be offering $280,000 because it's a $70,000 difference, right? So that gives us room to negotiate and still be within the margin that we would like to pay, which is around the $300,000 mark, so it would be comfortable with. And we could even go up to 370, and still 20% would put us around 300,000, but doesn't leave as much negotiating room in terms of going up for us. These are the tools that we use to kind of figure out what budget we felt comfortable with, as well as kind of what our strategy would be when looking for a home. So once we had our budget in place, then we were able to kind of go backwards and figure out what down payment we wanted to save up for. So if we're looking in the range from $350,000 to around $370,000 and hoping to get that closer to $3,000, then we're going to need somewhere between $30,000 and $40,000 to be able to save up for the down payment. Okay. So technically, if you put 20% down, then this would eliminate PMI, private mortgage insurance. But the addition of having this is actually only like $100, maybe $200 more. Rather than putting an additional $30,000 down up front, I'd rather spend the extra $100 to $200 and have that money still in my savings account for things that could potentially come up. This will also make it so that it doesn't take us quite as long to be able to put money down for a house. Closing costs cover fees that are accrued throughout the process, including like home appraisal, as well as searches on your home's title, and other things depending on the state that you're in. So normally closing costs range from about 3% to 6%. So to be on the safe side, I did my calculations based on 6%. So If we were purchasing a home that was anywhere between $300,000 to $370,000, we need $20,000 to $22,000 for closing costs. So when we factor in that we're saving $50,000, and then we're assuming that we would put 30 down, and then we'd have an additional 20 to put for closing costs. So another important factor to consider is your credit score. So most home loans require a minimum 620 credit score. This will obviously impact your interest percentage as well. Okay, so once we have all that information compiled, then we're ready to get our documentation in order to actually have a conversation with a mortgage loan office. Doing research for this, some of the documents that I'll need to provide are pay stubs or W-2s for my income. They usually require the previous 2 months. They also require tax returns from the past 2 years, W-2 statements from the past 2 years. And then of course, a valid government issued ID or a social security card. Okay, so in my next video on this series, I'm going to be talking about some of the potential places that we're considering moving to. So like I said earlier in the video, we currently live in Florida, but as I was explaining, the housing market is pretty expensive here, and it's been pretty difficult to find a house within our range that is sort of the image of what we're looking for. So we are open to expanding our horizons and kind of looking at other states within the United States to see where we might potentially want to live. So in my next video, I'm kind of going to go through our process for evaluating other states and just have a little bit of fun with it. You guys can kind of help me make the decision along the way, and then potentially in the future as we go and visit these states, potentially be taking you along for that as well. So hopefully that'll be fun for everybody. And now that I have all of my finances in a row, our next steps are really going to be contacting a loan office and getting more details and getting through kind of the pre-approval stage. So as we go through that process, I'll definitely share details along the way so that you can all kind of follow along. And if you're currently in the process of buying a home, then hopefully this can kind of give you some information before you take these steps as well. With that, thank you all so much for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed this one, and I'll catch you in my next one. Bye!